Sirimavo Bandaranaike, more famously known as Sirimavo Bandaranaike, was a Sri Lankan politician and stateswoman. She was the world's first woman to become Prime Minister of a country. She made such a history after her party won the Ceylon general election in 1960 and chose her as the new Prime Minister of Ceylon. She made a comeback and served 2 more terms as Prime Minister, from 1970 to 1977 and again from 1994 to year 2000. She was born Sirimavo on April 17, 1916 at Ratnapura, Elavalawalawa, in an affluent and notable aristocratic family to Barnes Ratwate and Rosaline Mahavelattanne Kumarihami as their eldest child among 2 daughters and 4 sons. Political environment prevailed in her house since her childhood, as her father, Barnes Ratwate, was a member of the Senate and also the State Council of Ceylon. She was a descendant of the eminent Radala family, one of whose descendants, the Disave of Martale, Ratwate Disave, was a signatory to the Kandyan Convention. Sirimavo's paternal uncle Harris Luke Ratwate was a Ceylonese legislator who served as the chief lay custodian Diyavadana Nilame of the Temple of the Tooth, while her uncle Sir Kuda Ratwate Adigar was the first elected mayor of Kandy. Sirimavo's siblings were all well-established personalities in political and other spheres of Sri Lanka. As for her 4 brothers, Barnes Jr. was a Supreme Court judge, Dr. Sivali was the Director General of the Export Promotion Secretariat, Dr. Mackey was the Prime Minister's private secretary, and Clifford was the chairman of the State Plantation Corporation. She attended a posh Roman Catholic school, St. Bridget's Convent in Colombo. After completing her matriculation at St. Bridget's Convent, she studied for inter-arts as well. Although she received a Catholic education, she remained a staunch Buddhist. In fact, she was a real Sinhala Kulakantava, noble lady, who was always seen clad immaculately in Osiria, her signature attire. In point of fact, when Lord Baden-Powell, the founder of the modern scouting movement, visited Ceylon in 1932, she was a girl guide at school, and at her request, she was allowed to wear the Lama Saria, decorated with guides' badges instead of usual school uniform. In 1940, Sirimavo was married to Solomon West Ridgeway Dyers Bandaranaike, an Oxford-educated barrister and colonial government minister who was 17 years her senior. Their wedding was dubbed the wedding of the century. The newly married spent a few days with Solomon's parents at Horogolla Valawa and later moved into Wentworth, a residence on Guildford Crescent, Colombo 7. While residing there, Sirimavo developed a fancy for tennis and was seen walking to Women's International Club in the evenings with cousin Mrs. Ruby Danton Obesekara. It was her favorite form of sport even before her marriage, and she took part in several amateur tournaments even during her schooling years. At Wentworth, she gave birth to her 3 children, and then from Guildford Crescent they moved to Rossmead Place. In point of fact, Wentworth on Guildford Crescent, Colombo 7 was the family home of musician and cinematographer Lionel Went. She had a sudden entry into politics in 1960 after her husband Solomon Bandaranaike, also referred as SWRD Bandaranaike, the then Prime Minister of Ceylon, was assassinated by a Buddhist monk, Taldue Somanamathero, on September 26, 1959 at Tintagel, the private residence of the Bandaranaikes at Rossmead Place, Colombo 7. Solomon, a charismatic leader, was a founding member of United National Party, UNP, who later parted ways from the party to form Sri Lanka Freedom Party, SLFP, and remained its leader until death. In 1956, Solomon became Prime Minister, but before he could complete his term, he was assassinated. The assassination created a sudden power crisis, leading to a brief political turmoil. The subsequent March 1960 elections saw SLFP being defeated by UNP. This is when Sirimavo was chosen as the legitimate successor of Solomon as the party leader by SLFP. Although the March 1960 election saw formation of a minority government of UNP, its inability to retain power led to July 1960 elections. During July elections, Sirimavo led her party from the front that resulted in SLFP achieving a parliamentary majority. On July 21, 1960, she became the Prime Minister of Ceylon, making history as the first woman to hold such a position in the world. She held office till March 25, 1965. She was often criticized as a weeping widow by her critics and rivals, who accused her of capitalizing her husband's death to rise to power by emotionally charging up people for garnering support. Sirimavo, a socialist, advanced her husband's socio-economic policies, including nationalization of principal sectors of economy, encompassing banking and insurance, maintaining neutral international relations, that is, following non-alignment policy with neither West nor East, and she actively advocated for Buddhism and the national Sinhalese language and culture. She represented the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and remained its leader for a long time.